I've come to the Peak District where there's a bunch of caves, and today we're going to go exploring with the new Pura 80 Ultra, which has been out for a little bit, but it's new to me. And yeah, I think this will be a good test because it'll be really dark inside, it's really bright outside, and let's just see how it does. It's mad that you can see people on top of the hill that I can't see with my eyes at all.
I'll just draw your attention to the hammers and chisels there, because a little bit later on there's a section that's been mined, and I'll talk through how the miners used to do it in the old days, and I'll also talk about how they do it today. So that's another little section. Sorry sir, if you're videoing.
Right, so that was Blue John Cavern, which was pretty cool. Lots of steps, got a bit sweaty towards the end there, and I wasn't allowed to film, as you probably saw, but I did anyway. Hopefully the next cave will be more accommodating to filming, but we'll see. We'll just do it anyway. See you there. Okay, so we're now heading to the Devil's Arse, which is the best name of any cave probably anywhere. I'm filming this on the selfie camera, which we haven't tried out yet. It does have autofocus, and it's still wider than most, but it's nowhere near as wide as the Pura 70 Ultra one was. You can zoom in on this all the way to 2x if you want, but you can't switch around to the front camera, which is a shame, because the great sign here, it may be mirrored, but
burn marks on the head, you knew exactly what job they'd been given, which was this: to make a figure of 8 on the end of a rope, take the bottom part, put it through the top part, and pull. And that became a loop, a circle on the end of your rope that never ever came undone. And it was this that the miner wanted, so that he knew when he went down the lead mine, he was on the end of that rope and his life was going to be safe.
Okay, now let's have a look at some of the photos I took on the same day. I'm just going to go through them chronologically, I think. I'm not going to go into great detail on all of them, but I'll give you a few samples of the different kind of images I got. We'll start with this zoom, which you saw in video as well. So this is a shot from the ultra-wide, which looks pretty great actually. But if you zoom in and peep the details, you can see this one looks a little bit soft. And when we switch to the main camera, there's a noticeable difference in the detail. Same case in video, but just as noticeable in photos. And that's kind of a shame because the ultra-wide was the obvious choice in a lot of these situations when you've got a big landscape or, you know, large cave interior to show off. You want to get that all in frame. And unfortunately, the quality does suffer a bit when you're using the ultra-wide. Now this is at 2x. There's a little degradation in quality, but not much. Still looks really good at 2 times. Then we'll switch to the 3.7x, which is our first telephoto option. Massive sensor, and I think it's showing amazing dynamic range, great detail over a long distance. That's pretty impressive stuff. Next, this one's at 10 times, which uses the sensor shift. So the sensor shifts to a different position. I've got a video showing that. I'll put that on screen. Uses different optics to get a longer focal length. Very clever stuff. Although it does lower the image quality slightly. The max resolution is 12 megapixel when you're at 10 times zoom, whereas it's 50-ish, I think, at around 3.7x zoom. And weirdly, in video, that extra telephoto sensor is just never used. Not really sure why, because we have enough resolution. Maybe it's to do with stabilization, I'm not really sure. But for whatever reason, you can only use it in photos. And I don't think it's quite as impressive as the 3.7x. But I do think it looks better than a pure digital crop of that. And that's even more true when you push further. So that's our maximum zoom. And yeah, it looks crap. But yeah, these people on the hill, I really could barely see them at all with the naked eye. And yeah, it's kind of astonishing how far you can zoom with this camera. I wouldn't recommend going all the way to 100x. That doesn't look good. Look how far we're zooming from. We're zooming in on this tiny little hill. It's pretty damn impressive. Okay, moving on to some photos from inside the cave now. We're starting with a shot on the ultra-wide camera. And I actually took quite a lot of photos on the ultra-wide camera. I think I may have said this already. But I really wanted to show off all of the location. And the ultra-wide is the only way to do that. But obviously, it's not the ideal choice because it's got the smallest sensor of the bunch. But even still, I think it did a pretty good job here in some pretty dim lighting. You can see if you zoom in, it's a little soft. But that's just what you deal with when you shoot with the ultra-wide. We move in to the main camera, which is now 24mm rather than 27mm on the Pura 70 Ultra. You still get a lot on your shot, but it's a lot more zoomed in. And obviously, the detail is in a completely different league. Quite like this shot. A lot going on, a lot of texture, a lot of detail everywhere in the frame. Now, this is a portrait mode shot. When you're in portrait mode, it doesn't use 3.7x. It uses like 5.4 or something, which is kind of interesting. I'm not sure why it does that. But you can see Huawei's edge detection is pretty good. It's usually quite good in my experience. Does look like maybe we missed a strand of hair here, but other than that, like all these tiny little wisps were captured, and it's a pretty natural looking background blur. It's a pretty good job here. The thing you have to contend with in these lighting conditions is motion blur. You can see this one's come out a bit more blurry, and I've got quite a few blurry portrait shots in low light conditions. That's the same with any phone, to be fair. This is another shot from the telephoto at its native 3.7x. Pretty decent, maybe a tiny bit of motion blur on this one, but loads of detail. Looks really nice. Love the compression that this lens creates. Nice and soft over in the background here. Okay, I'm not gonna fully analyze all of these, but yeah, I just want to say extremely challenging lighting throughout this cave system. You can kind of see here the lighting's all mismatched. Some areas have tungsten bulbs, some areas have cold LED lighting, and it was super dark despite all the lighting. There's a nice little detail shot on the main camera of these fossilized sea creatures that were all over the walls. And here's a macro shot on the telephoto of the same subject. You can see you get a load of compression from that big sensor. And you can focus pretty close, but it's nowhere near as good as the macro on the Pura 70 Ultra or the Mate X6, which is something I found a little disappointing. It's still very good. It's probably about on par with the Vivo X200 Ultra. You don't get quite those same microscope capabilities as you got with the last few Huawei releases. I really like this shot. It looks extremely abstract. It's on the main camera, shot wide open, loads of detail, really interesting textures. This one will make a good phone wallpaper if you're like really into slimy caves. And same shot with the ultra wide, which is kind of a nicer composition, I think, but you can see when you zoom in, the sharpening has to be cranked up to combat the softness of the ultra wide, and it doesn't hold up to as much scrutiny. But if you zoomed out, it looks sick. It'll look good on Instagram and things like that. Now this one's on the telephoto. You can see some cool details here. You got those fossilized sea things. Sorry, I don't know what they're called. Again, that lovely compression, shallow depth of field from the big sensor. I quite like this one as well. Here you're seeing some of that signature Huawei haziness on light sources. I always think Huawei shots look like you've got a Pro Mist filter attached. I'm not really sure why that is, but I'm not complaining because I think it looks great. Yeah, this one's super sharp, just looking good. Now, in very dark conditions, the selfie camera struggles quite a bit. I've got some in brighter conditions later on, but you can see everything's soft here. I'm completely out of focus. But if you switch around and use the larger sensor on the rear camera, you get way better results. Not perfect still, but much better. But I won't dwell on these too long because I've got some better ones later on. Now this shot is taken on the telephoto, and this is the titular blue John mineral that is mined from this cave. It's a type of fluoride that's only found in this area of Derbyshire because of its regular fluoride, but it has this bluey, purpley and yellow banding throughout it, which is super rare. I don't really know much about rocks, but I'm telling you what the tour guide told me. And yeah, here it is on the rock face. This one's come out great, lovely and sharp, which is impressive considering the lighting conditions. And as I've said with all the rest, lovely roll off, shallow depth of field from that massive sensor. Getting even closer, I think we may have a tiny bit of motion blur in this one. It's not looking quite as sharp, but it's looking pretty good. This one might be better actually. Looks nice and sharp over on this area, which is where we're focusing. See the light refracting off these like shards of crystal. And as I said earlier, I've got loads of ultra wide shots just because it was really nice to get everything in frame. But it's a shame the quality's not that great in these conditions on the ultra wide. This one's pretty nice though on the telephoto. And this one's at 2x. I didn't do many at 2x in the cave, but it just felt appropriate for this one. I really like the beam of light we've got coming off the torch. It's done a good job handling the dynamic range. Some really dark areas of the frame, super bright torch, but everything looks pretty well exposed. Bit of sharpening on our guy's face. You know, it was dark. What can you do? Pretty good detail overall. Oh, this is an interesting one. So this is an area of the rock face where there's those blue John crystals, but you can't really tell. It just kind of looks like normal rocks. But when you shine a torch directly on it, it suddenly glows a lot brighter blue. I tried to capture that with 2 photos. I think it's worked. Quite like this photo as well. This is on the main camera, shot wide open with the adjustable aperture. Excellent texture on the foreground here. Lovely roll off to our defocused background up there. This one just looks great. Another quick zoom outdoors now with these paragliders. So this is mainly for context. This is where I was standing with the main camera. Here's our 3.7x zoom. You can see a lot more, but we're not that close. And this is pushed all the way, this is about 40x. So really big zoom. Obviously the quality is not going to be great, but I like that you can still just about see the strings from the paraglider. There is some detail, and there are details that I couldn't see with my eyes, which is all you can really ask for. I think this is about max zoom. It's looking worse, isn't it? So now we're moving on to shots from the second cave, the Devil's Arse. I tried to get a few portrait mode shots of our tour guide. Very challenging lighting here. And this isn't a knock on the Huawei. I think any phone would struggle because he was moving quickly. The lighting was absolutely crap. But still, done a pretty decent job here. His face is looking pretty sharp. But yeah, we've got a lot of motion blur to contend with. But even still, really good subject separation, good cutout from the background, and a pretty nice natural looking effect. This one came out pretty nicely too. He was showing us how they used to make ropes for miners in Victorian times. Yeah, we've got a few decent ones here. Can't complain too much considering the lighting conditions. It's a nice shot of the cave opening on the main camera. Really nice. Great dynamic range because it's super bright outside, super dim inside, and it's balanced everything out nicely. Excellent sharp details, especially in the center. And that is wide open, so that's about as bad as the main camera is ever going to look. If it was stopped down more, it would get even sharper. Yeah, this has something I wanted to show off. When you stop down the main sensor, well, it'll stop itself down depending on the lighting conditions. But this is at f2, so the aperture blades are shut slightly. It creates these lovely starburst effects on lights. You can see it down here and a big one in the center. And I think they just look great. Obviously, everyone's got their own personal preferences. You might not like them too much, but I'm a big fan, and I think it works really well in this image. Not got much to say about this photo other than I quite like it. It looks good. What I have noticed with the Pura 70 Ultra, I got a lot of like very warm green tinted shots, and I'm not getting them with the Pura 80 Ultra. It's doing a much better job with the white balance, I think. I'm not sure if there's a hardware change that's affected that, or if it's just software, but it seems to be working because the color accuracy is much more reliable. And this is a selfie in better lighting conditions. As I mentioned, it's not great lighting conditions here, but much better than the previous attempt. And I'm pretty pleased with that. You've got a tiny bit of softness to the background, which always looks good. Good texture on my face. Yeah, I think the new selfie camera, while it's not as wide as the previous model, the quality does seem to be better. And here's the same shot, but with the phone flipped around using the main rear camera. Love the background separation. It almost looks like portrait mode. That's why we want 1-inch sensors, guys. Please, manufacturers, stop removing the 1-inch sensor. But what I don't like here is there's some smoothing going on. My facial hair looks weird. Like, you get beauty mode options for the selfie camera, but you don't for the rear camera. So I don't think there's anything I can do about that. And I don't want that. So that's a bit of a bummer. But you can only see that when you zoom in close. Otherwise, just a good image, aside from my weird smile. Oh, here's another macro example. This one is shot at 10x, but you can only do macro close-ups with the 3.7x. So it's a digital crop on that 3.7x lens, but you could barely tell because the quality is amazing. But yeah, as I said earlier, you just can't get as close as you could with the Pura 70 Ultra. Bit of a bummer, but it's still good for macros. Just maybe not the best of all time. Another example of the same thing. I think I've got a few here. This bismuth thing was mental. Looks alien to me. And for context, this is what we were zooming in on. It was like one of these crystals in the foreground and this but you saw that in video. Yeah, they're very small, is all I'm saying. And it's our duck friend from the video section as well. This is in portrait mode. As I mentioned earlier, it crops to like 5.4x for some reason, but really good subject detection, really nice roll off of the depth of field effect. Okay, one last bonus thing. In case you're not aware, I've shown this off in my videos a few times before, but if you want to know what the adjustable aperture on the main sensor does, this is shot wide open, and it's a delicious pint in a nice country pub, and you can see the background is super blurry. And I want to draw your attention to this condiment holder thing on the right. You can't read that text because it's very blurry. And even the back of the beer mat is blurry. But if we stop this down, we can go all the way to F4. And F4, you can see suddenly that's now legible. And And the back of the beer mat is in focus as well. Much more of the table is in focus. So that's what the adjustable aperture does, as well as those starbursts that we saw earlier. There's none in this particular frame. This phone just gives you a bit more control over how blurry or not blurry your images are, which is pretty cool. And it's getting rarer. Xiaomi removed it on the 15 Ultra. You still get it on Honor phones, but it's only to f2, not to f4, so it's less useful. I just think it's pretty cool that Huawei's still hanging on in there with the adjustable aperture on its main sensors. Okay, so that's about it for this one. I hope you found it useful. So far, really enjoying using the Pura 80 Ultra. I'll probably be doing some comparisons with this and other popular phones like the Vivo X200 Ultra and probably the Oppo Find X8 Ultra as well. So let me know in the comments if you want to see them. But a few thoughts for now. I think some of the improvements over the Pura 70 Ultra are pretty great. The selfie camera's definitely improved. The telephoto at 3.7x is an improvement in most cases, but it doesn't have quite the same macro capabilities. Definitely improved for low light, definitely improved for long range zooms. I do think this is up there with the best camera phones on the market right now. But as for things I don't like so much, there's no log recording for video, there's no 4K 120 for slow-mo, and as I said, the macro capabilities aren't quite as good as they were on the previous model. But there's a lot more still to explore, so let me know what you think about this phone in the comments. If you're interested in the Huawei but you're worried about the lack of Google apps, check out my last video where I show you how to install them as long as you got the global version, which this is. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this kind of thing, get subscribed because there's always more stuff on the way, and I will catch you in the next one. Toodles.